Oh, no, well, I didn't understand.
The photos of Tiny Joe from the Tuckies.
This is not Joe. There's no They tried it. I'm pretty sure this is
Can't wait to show the real minister.
all the professional work that happens here. Where did these pictures come from?
The internet.
You didn't take.
Did you look up? Because I'm not certain that's what we come from.
No.
Oh, there's Tiny Joe. That's great.
All right. Where's the chairman? This meeting is over a couple minutes.
Wasn't that funny?
That was.
I'll show you.
He literally is like leaning over. He's like, "Oh, this is me."
Stay tuned, Ryan.
Pretty good. Ryan, you're up first and last in the middle.
You're gonna get
See,
one.
that was a joke.
Yeah.
Very funny joke.
Thank you.
That's how I watch your chat.
Well, I was gonna say that.
Oh,
There's a
man.
reason this meeting is
Tiny Joe. This one's actually Tiny Joe. This one I'm just screaming, crying.
I know Joe doesn't mom. I bet I can get some baby with friends on
You sent me
We need
It's true. My mom's pretty bad.
some photos of Joe.
You sent me that one photo of you, I think, to prove that you were cute as a child.
Well, no, I was just like the prospect of time Jones.
Are you meeting or? Is he missing again? Should I? Never had chicken or something.
Yeah.
It's 5 minutes left.
Thank you, Mr. I think you fix that.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Tuesday, November the 8th agenda session. I will now take a motion for our minutes. I have a motion for minutes. Without objections, the minutes will stand. Council, if you would, take a quick look through our items for this evening. Ordinances under final reading. If you have any questions, I'm watching the board. Are you active? Do you need to be, do you have the floor, Councilman, or can I go to Madam Vice Chair?
Well, I do have some comments about our agenda.
Okay. Let's, is yours related to something on the first page of our agenda here?
So I have two. One is a planning item, and one is a resolution.
Very good, sir.
Which order you want to take?
Whichever one you prefer. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. So planning item A, the case 2022-0191. That is my understanding that the applicant will be here this afternoon, but they still wish to withdraw, so I'll be making a motion to withdraw that request. Also, do you want to go to the resolution now or what?
Yes, sir, please. You have the floor.
So drop down to resolution 7G. And you will notice that there are two versions. One version is a version that I passed to the attorney's office to send out, I think, Thursday. And Mr. Chair, you had a great addition to adding, requested that the city attorney put an additional item on there that covers overnight guests. And, Council, you'll find in your packet two different versions. One that is noted alternate version 3 has the addition of chairman's request on there, overnight guest, the property manager must have a documented and enforced process to monitor guest visits and overnight guest stays. And I thought that was a very helpful and useful addition. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask this afternoon that when you call for this item, that you call for the alternate version 3.
Alternate version 3. All right. Thank you, sir. Is that all you need?
That's it.
All right. Thank you very much. Madam Vice Chair, I see your light is next.
Yes, for planning items H and I, I'll ask for a deferral for 1 week.
H and I will be on the lookout for a deferral for
Mhm.
1 week.
Yes,
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
thank you.
Dr. Burrs, you have the floor.
Thank you. Under planning, item F, the applicant wants that to defer, and I'll be making a motion to defer it till, do you prefer the 1st or 2nd December? The first one we review and the second one is when we vote. What, I guess I should be asking you that, Jenny. He wants to refer it till next month. What do you prefer?
Doesn't matter to me. Whenever you have to be ready.
Okay, he may not be ready then, or let's just say to the second meeting in December, whatever that date is.
Okay. Yeah.
Do we have that date?
I'm pulling it up right
Okay.
now. Is that the 13th?
13th?
Okay. Item F, case 0199.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question about that? I'm trying to, in relation to this specific request.
Yeah, I'm going to knock everybody. Can you just, can you
Well,
ask? Yeah.
Let me just ask.
Okay. So I've got a
We
lot.
are meeting the 20th, correct?
We're meeting, we're not meeting the 27th and we're not meeting the 3rd.
So it'd be possible to get both readings.
Both readings in before the end of the year.
That's what
Okay.
Yeah, we had to change that because of the construction
okay.
in here. So, okay.
Okay, the second thing, Mr. Chair,
December 13th.
is item 2022-0201. I will asking vote to pass with exceptions, with conditions.
Oh, item G.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I want to read the conditions now. And I know Karen's here. Let me ask you something. If we add a number of conditions, Karen, is that tantamount to a first reading? Or can I go ahead and add a number to this?
I can answer that for you.
Good.
If you amend it from the floor,
I'm
it will
going
still be
to.
considered, and it passes, it will be considered a first read.
Well, let me read them in the record right now. All the proper vetting has taken place, but I want to read it now and then I'll read it again later. Multifamily housing only, no more than 70 multifamily housing units, no expansion to existing building footprint except as needed to address Americans with disabilities. Maximum building height shall not be more than 2 stories. And chain fences around things are absurd. So I'm asking for a buffer, a 20-foot buffer. That's like with trees and bushes and all that. Backed by a wooden fence, because our whole idea is to make this look not like supported housing, but to make it very attractive and nice. So a 8-foot high side obscuring fence shall be installed along the rear and side perimeters. We'll take care of the front. The final one, the sidewalk along the Lee Highway side, that would be the front, with verge landscaping,
I'm sorry, what landscaping?
green. If it's going to be an apartment complex, it should look like a nice one.
I have a question, if I may,
Sure.
for Karen. Karen, UGC has a street edge requirement along a sidewalk or from a parking lot to a street, correct?
It does have street edge requirements. I don't know if that would be triggered through permitting with just a change of use, not knowing the expansion, but there is language in the in UGC for street frontage. I don't know how much depth there is to accommodate all of that, though.
Well, so let me say this. There's a big parking lot there. So there's
Correct.
plenty of room to accommodate that. And the reason I didn't put in the width is because I didn't know the width. That's up to you. But that,
Okay.
if I could have that by tonight.
Okay, and just confirming the fencing is rear and side perimeters and the 20-foot buffer to the inside of that.
No, to the out.
Okay.
Well, I don't know what you're calling it. I'm talking about trees and then fence.
And the fence along the property line.
Yes.
Okay. And then with green landscaping along the Lee Highway frontage. And I should have time to double check with permitting just on some language that would
Well, a
work.
sidewalk and then the green.
Okay.
And I've checked it out. And if I believe there's
Okay.
right away there to do it. But if not, then it can go in on the property because
Okay.
that's a very big lot and it can make it look really nice. So if you could just let me know those dimensions.
I will.
Because I really didn't know.
Okay.
Darren's right. The UGC thing, I don't know.
I'll work on that.
Okay.
Karen, if I may, Dr. Burrs, would you, if with the vegetation's a bit vague for LDO, I would imagine doing this a few times to determine whether you're asking for a Class A or a Class B.
What makes it look the best. So you tell me, is it
Class
the A or
is
the
our
B?
top level, Karen, landscaping.
I think the UGC street edge is intended to provide that top level landscaping. So we can pull the language and see if it's either elements. It sounds like the 20-foot landscape buffer, just to make sure, would be that type B, just to make sure we get exactly that quality. And it could be all of the UGC street frontage or landscaping along the frontage or just elements of it, but I will have to take a look at that. I haven't looked at that in a while.
We did one of these on Shallowford Road and it worked beautifully. It's just it's not UGC and UGC's weird. So I want
Right.
to, you teach me how to get to where what I want it to look
And
like.
I'll try to get with the landscaping coordinator or with Dallas Rucker and try to work out the language.
So that I have it for tonight. Because I
Correct.
want first reading tonight.
Correct. I will
Okay.
I will work on that now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, our 4 p.m. meeting, just as a reminder.
Correct.
If you take an example of street edge and you look at Broad Street Publix, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, that is the perfect example of UGC's street edge landscaping language. Am I not?
That had some conditions on it, so I don't know if that was supplemented with additional conditions, right? Additional language right off.
However they did it looks fantastic. But,
Okay. We have gotten good feedback about the street edge in UGC, so.
yeah.
Well, that's what we're looking for.
Mhm.
Because the method in my madness here is also to set a standard for whatever continues around in there.
Correct.
This will be the first one that's been redone. And we ought to be setting the example for what's done. And in the greater scheme of things, this is a nothing.
Okay,
So-
it's precedent
thank you.
setting. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Burrs. We'll be looking for that amendment proposal, and we'll have that tightened up in our packets before 4 o'clock.
Yes, I'll be working on that.
Okay.
Can we have some discussion about
We most certainly can have discussion. That's what agenda session is for. So what I'm going to ask real quick is I have almost every light lit up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in the order that the lights were brought up, and then hopefully we're hitting on this particular subject. If not, we will address it. Councilman Hester, you were next, sir.
Karen. Claim 6E 2022-0217 for the record. Want to show that does reflect 50 feet buffer from the site to the community, neighborhood. I just want to express that for the record.
I can double check to see if the site plan shows that. We have that as a condition, regardless of what the site plan shows. So it would be enforced through the condition separate, whether the site plan shows that or not.
Okay, I did speak with Chairwoman Hill, who spoke about.
Okay, and we did not have any feedback from the applicant that they could not accommodate that condition.
Okay, thank you.
That, just to clarify that is in the ordinance correct, or written into it currently. Okay.
Yes,
All
it's a
right.
condition.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You good, Councilman?
I'm good.
Very good. Councilman Henderson, you have the floor, sir. He was next in the queue. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Coonrod, you are right.
Thank you.
You are more than welcome.
From the look on my face, you saw I was just kind of settled, wait my turn.
I appreciate your indulgence for my misstep there.
Oh, no problem. I'm really confused at this point with all the conditions and everything that's gonna. I get, we want to be safe with our kids and that kind of thing. I'm all on board for that. But as I read through the conditions, it's somebody who done been just as involved in what I see. And if I was homeless, I for certain wouldn't want to go stay at this location. We're creating a mini prison, a mini jail right here, and we're supposed to be having creating safe housing for people who are unhoused at this time. And to me, when I think about that, it's not just people that are homeless on the street. It could be somebody staying and laying on their grandmama couch at that time, waiting to have somewhere to be housed. It could be somebody that's been, dislocated because they can't find nowhere to stay because their voucher expired. It could be a host of a lot of things. But when we think about homeless, we immediately criminalize it and say, oh, well, this is the type of person that's homeless. And to me, that's just sending all kind of red flags. Like I feel like I'm about to have a panic attack right now, just looking and thinking about it, because the people that need to be housed, we've put in this resolution to make sure that they're not housed. How many times have any of you went down where the people at that's saying, what's the reason that's preventing you from becoming, housed? What's the reason? And it's people down there that's not on drugs. It's people down there that's not dealing with mental health issues. It's the array of issues that can cause somebody to be homeless. I could have been homeless in 2017 when I decided to run for office and lost my job because of a conflict of interest, living on credit cards. Me being a convicted felon, would this have been the outcome of it? Because of my background previously 20-some years ago, I'm not able to get housed. You got people that's got kids, you got all of that. And when we're talking about increased enforcement, we can't even deal with the areas that we got now. Can't even deal with the stuff that we got now. A 16-year-old just got killed or found dead, shot by bullets just the other night, found early Sunday morning. And how long did it take the police to come? But we're talking about making sure that we're going to have increased enforcement in this area when we stepping over bodies in my district every day and can't get increased enforcement. All we get is excuses. And then we're saying, like, I can agree with the sex offenders and all that kind of stuff, drug manufacturing. I mean, I just think as a council, we really need to take a hard look at this. The accountability piece is already there because our district attorney, she can shut down any business that's not in compliance or that's considered a nuisance. She can do that without our permission. And we keep how many times do we have people coming up here talking about accountability on our part? And we can go back and revisit every Tuesday night and pull up documents and screenshots. How many times we've said ourselves, where's the accountability? Where's the accountability? I know I done said it myself plenty of times, and I done heard it more than often with my colleagues. And guess what? Every time we say that, we just band-aided and slide it on. But for this area, just it's coming across a little different. Now, when I think not too long ago, and it probably was a year or so ago, and I'm gonna wrap up because I'm really upset about this, is that we had a organization to come and stand right here at this podium. We gave them a TIF to create some kind of low-income supportive housing in the Woodlands, but they changed the name to Bayberry Apartments. When none of this given, the community came and said, oh, we would like to have some kind of enforcement because of all the drug activity and all the things that's happening in this neighborhood. We want the outside to look beautiful. We want green space and we want it landscape nice. Guess what they got? Nothing. Some new siding. That's what they got. But guess what's still happening? Police are scared to even go up there to the area. The same activity is still happening. People are still needing housing in that area, and they result to I'm gonna take it because it's less than $25 a month or zero at their best. But we're not putting all these restrictions on these companies that we giving TIFs and every pilots and everything else to create these hubs in the Black community. And we know the turnout of it every day because we read the reports. I just want this same, and we talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion. We even created a department for it, but it's not happening when it comes to our communities. It's not happening. We need the same kind of attention that we give to 37421 and all the other area codes that don't predominantly serve people that look like me. That's it. If we gonna do right, let's do right by the whole Chattanooga. If we want Chattanooga, let's be one Chattanooga. Right now, this don't feel like one Chattanooga. We're still excluding people. We're still criminalizing people. And that's not, I don't believe I saw any of that in the one Chattanooga strategy. I really want the council to just take a hard look at it. Make sure that we're adding and taking away the things that shouldn't be in here before we pass something that's not going to be in line with the one Chattanooga movement. This doesn't feel one Chattanooga. We leaving people out that need to be housed. Even if we saying no violent felonies, well, you could cuss somebody out and this could be considered an assault, and that's a violent charge. Like, we need to figure out exclusively what this means, because you get somebody that's gonna read and take exactly what it say. Oh, you a convicted felon, it's considered violent where you can't stay here. Oh, back 30 years ago, you had a drug manufacturing charge, so we can't give you anywhere to stay. And apartment complexes, they don't govern who come to visit you. That's what they do at a jail. That's what they do at a jail. If it's gonna be my house and I'm gonna pay rent and I'm housed here, I should be able to have guests. And it's up to the individual who live there to make sure that they have the appropriate people to come to their house, because everybody got those cousins. And if it's anybody like my family, they off the chain. I take ownership for that. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm just the only person that ain't embarrassed about it. If you got anybody like I got in my family, they pulling up ratchet and everything else. You may have to tell that family member, you're gonna have to leave so-and-so at home. You're gonna have to make sure you done secured your weapon. In fact, don't bring it on my property. You may have to just tell them, listen, I'm gonna have to pat you down myself before you come on my premises. Everybody got those kind of family members. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about, but I claim all of mine because I already know. I've not forgotten where I come from because I was this person that you're talking about on this paper. I'm just asking that and I'm done, but just if we can really take a look at it.
I appreciate your comments. Councilman Henderson, you have the floor. Sir.
Thank you. So Councilwoman, let me say, I don't think, and as we were putting this down, I don't think you're that person on this paper. I really don't, but you've given me a lot to respond to in the fact that I think it's not uncommon for this council to consider the community's wishes anytime we're doing a rezone or something similar to this. Even, and I'll, when we did the Tubman TIF, there was a community committee put together to address a community agreement. what the community wanted to see in order for that TIF to pass. And we laid it all out. Anytime I have a rezone in my district, I always engage the community. Many times it's either through a neighborhood association, it could be through an HOA. I listen to their concerns because they do have concerns. Anytime you change zoning in a community, you bring some aspect, I'm gonna call it danger, whether it's increased traffic, and now you've got something else to think about, or you've got some other factor to look at. So I always engage, at least I engage my community anytime there's a rezoning, even if it's a residential lot, to make sure that the community is heard. The fencing part of it, so I guess it's whatever your perception of a fence is how you would view it. We don't put a fence on the southern border, and this may not be a great example, but we don't put a fence on the southern border to keep all the Americans from going into Mexico. We put a fence down there to try to keep people that would try to do harm to Americans from coming in. And that's how I see this fence. It's in the resolution, it says with a single point of entry. If you have a 24-hour security guard, it's going to be a lot easier for that security guard to monitor a single point of entrance than it is a whole perimeter. And I see it as protection for these residents. And yes, we need to look at the residents of this and make sure they're protected as well. We need to make sure that if somebody's living there and maybe they don't pat down that cousin when they come in, but we're responsible for the guests that enter that place that could affect those other residents. So we have a responsibility to those residents in that building to make sure they're safe. Now, as far as the Bayberry Apartments, I can't really speak to that. I wasn't asked to get involved, and it wasn't my district, and I didn't get involved. But I was sort of, I guess, drug into this one, and had lots of phone calls and requests. And that's the reason I wanted to put forward. And really what the resolution does is ask or direct the mayor to include these in an RFP. That's where I think the enforcement comes into. But as far as the felons, I think we do have a responsibility to show some concern for the children that's in that school, just a few, maybe 1,000 feet down the road. I mean, God knows we don't want anything to happen to those kids, regardless if they're black, white, or yellow. We have a responsibility to the kids. And I go back to a statement that Councilwoman Burrs says many times, what does yes look like? How do we get to yes? How do we make sure that we have supportive housing for those individuals that need it? And at the same time, we protect those kids that are right down the road in a school building. That's sort of where I am, and trying to figure out what does yes look like. Yes, to me, looks like this resolution. Now, let me address, and I think we'll have to amend this resolution if Councilwoman Burrs, the fencing conditions that you've asked for, when, as Chairman pointed out, the hardscape that's there at Publix on Broad Street, there is some fencing there in the front. It looks very nice. It doesn't look like just fencing, but it creates a barrier to where people can't just enter that perimeter at any place. There's points of entry. And I think maybe something along those lines with fencing around the rest of the perimeter might serve well. Again, I go back to the single point of entry that a security guard can monitor more effectively than if the perimeter is just wide open. I think we do have a responsibility to the residents of that building. The other thing that I have a little bit of the other question about is the footprint limiting it to the footprint of that building, I'm not sure that it would be wise for us as a city to put that restriction on us or that condition on us in the event that even if we wanted to expand this facility, or, at some point in time, if this doesn't, one of the points in the resolution is the ability to close it down if it becomes I guess a threat to the community. And then we have this condition. Now, I know conditions can always be lifted, but then we put lifting those conditions upon another council to undo and to open that can of worms up again. And maybe we just need to think through that just a little bit longer before we, I guess, maybe include that as a condition. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Knoll, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to have to agree with Councilwoman Kumar. These conditions are definitely a bit much for me. Definitely a bit. Overnight guests, if you live in your home, you should be able to have anyone in your home that you wish to be there. Most of us are not going to invite anyone into our home that is not going to be under control at the time. Offense has never, ever kept anybody out of anything. People climb over fence, they bust the fence, they tear a fence down. Does absolutely nothing for if you're considering safety. At what point are we going to stop having a respectable person or persons? The scripture says, what you do to the least of them, you have done unto me. It's way too much. There is no way that all of this should be included in a place that you're giving a homeless people to have shelter. It's ridiculous. It breaks, seriously, it breaks my heart. It really does, because I know people that are homeless and they are not criminals. They're not drug dealers. They're not thieves. They are just in a bad position. At some point, we have got to stop cherry picking what area of town, what neighborhood we are going to do all we can do in order for it to be comfortable for those that live there. We all should be comfortable. We should not have respectable places in this city of Chattanooga. It just should not be. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You are most welcome, and thank you for those comments. Councilwoman Hill, I see you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to address the zoning case first for item G, because it is, what started this conversation within this body since our unanimous purchase of this property with a unanimous understanding of the intent of this property about, a year ago, a unanimous surplusing of this property in recent months. So we were of one mind for quite a while. So the zoning here, I am also concerned about these conditions for a couple reasons. I think Councilwoman Burge, you made a very wise point about precedent. And we do have a couple other properties on the same street that my understanding is there is some interest in, but also I know you've been really thoughtful about growth and change in your district, and have often used conditions as part of that visioning. When we talk about our TIF regulations or our pilot regulations, Jermaine has come to us multiple times and said, the city needs flexibility to do the city's work. The city is not a private citizen. And I think that there's validity there, that the city can have flexibility, but also set some parameters for itself. And so in this instance, I think it would be short-sighted of us to take away our flexibility with the restrictions on it only ever being multifamily, it only ever being 70 units, it only ever being 2 stories, no change to the shape of the building or the footprint of the building. All of these make me really uncomfortable because they are very focused on a singular plan for a singular moment, not for perpetuity. And we don't know, to Councilman Henderson's point, if this may be the best thing that ever happened to Chattanooga and we decide we need to add 20 more units. Or we decide, wow, we have adjusted our plans and we need to make this an office building. I mean, we need to have options for the city. And so I am opposed to those conditions. The fence on the rear makes perfect sense and has been something that has long been discussed. I mean, this property has always abutted a residential area. This is not new. So I think it would be being a good neighbor to add the fence at the back. However, I would like us to think carefully about telling our team right now that they're going to need to build an 8-foot wooden fence along the side. Are we in fact moving toward a Lee Highway that is a gated community of wooden fences? That's not the city that I mean, even talking about wooden fences and the maintenance issues with wooden fences, to me, this just isn't fully formed. And given the fact that UGC has requirements for street frontage and sidewalks, I think we've got a lot of that covered. So I'm disinclined to vote for all of those changes, but I would support the fence at the rear. As it relates to the resolution, alternate version 3, which I've studied, I was at the community meeting, and I will say that the communication about this project, it's been awful. Absolutely awful. I will remind us once again, we voted on purchasing this building a year ago. We voted on, and with the knowledge of what this was going to be. And the fact that we would be in a place where now we're talking about adding resolutions for a requirement for a RFP that doesn't exist, there's carts and horses and nobody's in the right order here. These items, increased enforcement, no sex offenders, et cetera, these were items that were shown on a slide. My understanding from multiple talks with Joda about this is these were developed because of community feedback, which we know as a body that feedback came from states all over this country, from counties all over this country. The vast majority of the feedback that we have received has not been from people who live in the city of Chattanooga. We have been elected to represent the city of Chattanooga. Councilwoman Burrs has been elected to represent District 6. I have always felt in my public service that there are multiple layers of that responsibility. Our responsibility daily to our district, the people who actually vote for us, and our quality of life issues within our district, that's one part of what we do. But I would argue there's a part that's even more important, and that is shaping the organization to which we represent. So for me, at one point, that was the school board, and I needed to think about every school, not just the kids that were in the geographic boundary where their parents voted for me. And in this situation, every one of us up here has a responsibility to the entire city of Chattanooga. And being a leader requires a backbone, which caused me to sit up a little straighter. We have to come to this project with vision. And also, I think, with structure. So, as we look at this list of items in the resolution that were, for the most part, created to placate a very loud and angry group of people who don't have all the information in front of them because, frankly, all the information doesn't exist yet. None of us have all the information in front of us. That doesn't mean the project doesn't need to move forward, because there are steps and processes to make things like this happen. So what I would suggest is that we pass the ordinance related to the rezone with limited conditions. And then if we feel a need to have this resolution, the one item that I think we could have in this resolution that would make sense would be that the city of Chattanooga will form a community advisory committee to include leadership from local churches, including, or we will, to include leadership from local churches, including Silverdale Baptist Church, neighborhood residents, representatives, other local schools. How about with other leaders in this space? Like this, we need smart people around the table. We need our homeless coalition around this table. We need our healthcare groups around this table. We don't have to have it now to rezone something, but we need it as part of this process. And the 9 of us do not need to be writing an RFP. It's not our job. We are not in this. We are not experts in this. We are experts in our individual districts. That's our job. So knowing that all of these items on this resolution have come really from a place of fear and unknowing. These are uninformed assumptions that create a place that I would agree is somewhat like a jail, that is definitely based in a concept that the people who live here have no clue how to be grown-ups or humans. I agree that this is overreached, and I think that we could require, in the form of a resolution, the city of Chattanooga and any service provider operating supportive housing to form that community advisory group. Maybe we have them do this before the RFP gets written to come up with what the RFP should be. But this is not how this RFP gets written. Not right here, not like this. This is an inappropriate way to start creating specifications for a project. It sets us up to build something that's broken before we build it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hill. Councilman Smith, you have the floor, sir.
Alrighty. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would it be possible to have read back the conditions that Councilwoman Burrs had proposed? I didn't get them all written down, and I know we've been discussing them. I just want to make sure that I did have all them written. Do you mind?
No, sir. Yeah, I'm going to need to clear the queue in order to get her. Dr. Burrs, will you please activate your light? And you have the
Okay.
mic now.
So a couple of things, Mr. Chair. My colleagues are absolutely correct in what they're saying. I think what we need to do is differentiate between conditions, which I'm going to read right now for the rezoning, and the resolution, okay? Because my colleagues were looking at the resolution, and it is self-serving. And I had nothing to do with that, but the conditions are in response to what I heard my colleagues saying they didn't want. My colleagues, not the neighborhood. First of all, Jenny, you're really correct. Most of the people that were out here don't even live in the city. All right. And I'm glad, thank all of you so much for speaking up, because I've been kind of carrying the banner on my own. So thank you very much. If you saw me smiling, I thought, God, finally somebody's saying something. Okay. So these were the conditions. Multifamily housing only And I think that it was more of a protective thing. By the way, this is the result of several of you sending things to me that you thought we should try and fly. The only one I can take any responsibility for is not having a chain link fence. But let me sorry about that, got to keep your demeanor up here. So thank you for opening the door, Jenny. And Kim, thank you very much for asking me to read these back. No more than 70 multifamily housing units. I think that may be catering to other folks. No expansion to existing, same thing. Maximum building height, no more than 2 stories, same thing. The 8-foot high wooden site obscuring fence, and I think you hit this already, with landscaping, was to set a benchmark for whatever happens there. I want it to happen the right way. Okay. And the others, I don't care about one way or the other. The sidewalk along Lee Highway, I think one of the things we've been doing is trying to have builders add sidewalks that we can connect. So I'm willing to drop whatever you guys want to drop. I take responsibility for making the place pretty, the landscaping, and the wooden fence I like because I don't like chain link fences. I think they're awful no matter where they are. It is like a prison. The other comments I can't make any comment about because the only thing I did was this. So I need some direction by the end, Mr. Chair, and perhaps my colleague said it, and that is we want to go for UGC. Oh, and Jenny, we haven't surplused it yet. That's coming later on. We bought it, but we didn't surplus it yet. Yeah, we put a,
Place it on the agenda.
yeah, I wanted to stop to the surplus for just the reasons you're talking about. And that is, yeah, so that's the one safety. We haven't surplused it. So, but this gets back to you, Ken. Do you have all of those? And do you have any comments? I need to know at 4:00 what I'm bringing forward that represents what the council wants. That's all I need. Relative to conditions, what you guys were talking about was the resolution, and I had no part of that. So that's what I need. Okay, thank you.
You got it. So let me do this. Councilman Smith, do you need the floor back, sir? Okay, then I will go. If I might, I haven't had a lot to say yet. If I could jump in here, I think everybody, if you haven't had a turn, please correct me. The problem is we have a need, we have an idea, but we're not on the same page yet. And this conversation is really important. And I wish there were a lot of families that were here at the meeting and here last Tuesday night that have some genuine, real concerns. And I think that they deserve their voices heard. These are their children that are nearby. But I'm also hearing some conversation at this council that the bottom line is, folks, we don't know what this is going to be. We don't know yet. Jenny, I think you're right. The cart is before the horse, so to speak, in this. The RFP should outline what we're looking at, what we're trying to do. The rezoning of the property is rezoning of the property, and we can look at that as a separate issue, and we can apply conditions just like any other zoning. I do have some concerns about the ability to build 5 stories on that site. That is not unchecked. I think that's something that has not been brought up. And quite frankly, I would like to know from the applicant, who happens to be the city, do you intend to build 5 stories? And if not, why is that such? And why there's a pushback? But Councilwoman Coonrod, you're right. There's a lot of unanswered questions right now. And I think that in order for this council and working in conjunction with the community, whether they live in the city or whether they don't live in the city, they have kids at that school and they care. And I have a son and I care too. And anybody who has a child should care. So I just feel like we are just in this fog right now. And I don't like being in the fog. It makes me uneasy. I cannot see. As a so licensed boat captain, being in the fog makes me tread very carefully and ring my bell every so often to find my way. So that's where I am at with this whole process. I think there's a lot of conversation to be had. I love the idea of an advisory committee being formed and a conversation had with all perspectives, including many different perspectives from this council, in the formulation of a plan that, we're not always going to be comfortable in anything we do, and that's okay. That's all right. But I think that there is a lot of work to be done in this conversation, and I've got a whole list, including who we are trying to help and what that looks like as a model. Because right now we talk about success, and I don't see success on the horizon for me right now because there's too many unanswered questions. So I agree, and I appreciate everything and the different perspectives that's being presented here today. And I hope that whatever this leads to in our next step, I wanted to get those thoughts out, and I appreciate you allowing me to share those with you. Councilwoman Dotley, Madam Vice Chair, I see your light, ma'am. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much. And I wasn't here last week to hear some of the public input and comments, but I did listen. And I did want to echo some of the sentiments of my fellow council members in regards to from being a minute prison to cherry picking communities. This is just a lot, from the resolution even being so specific as to saying including Silverdale Baptist Church and Silverdale Baptist Academy. Why is this? Why do they have to specifically be named? When I listened last week, Pastor R.J. McCowan was here with Numa Christian Center. He's not listed in here. Also, in listening to whether it's the conditions or the resolution, I thought, are they going to get matching orange jumpsuits with numbers on them also? Because it's becoming, I think Councilwoman Hill said it best. She said, last year we allotted money for this. We said, yes, the people said, let's do supportive housing. Let's do this. And so there are a lot of things that we can't do. We don't have the money to do. We don't have the time to do. We don't have the resources to do. This is one of those things that we can do. We can help people. We can come in and say, hey, this is supportive housing. Let's do this. And so we agree, yes, we want this to be supportive housing. And I understand, conditions are important. Understanding, what do we want this to look like? Because across the street from it, I believe it's an apartment complex that looks or townhomes or whatever that look very nice. So we want it to look nice. So I agree with Councilwoman Burrs on that. But when we talk about students and children, I have Howard in my district. I have some of Clifton Hill. I have Clifton Hills Elementary, Calvin Donaldson. Those students are just as important. And those students' parents live in our city. And so when I think about Howard, they have a chain link fence between them and the homeless encampment there. We have a great homeless services team that whenever we reach out, they go out and they make sure that things are okay. They check in with people and make sure that they are mitigating whatever issues that come up. So when we talk about children and we talk about, well, we want the children to be safe, everybody want their child to be safe. So why is it that the children at Silverdale Baptist Academy and people at Silverdale Baptist Church can come here and say, well, this is what we want and this is what y'all need to do, and then we get papers that say, or a resolution that says, okay, we're going to do it. No. At some point, we have to stand up and say, no, we want supportive housing. Our people have said we want supportive housing, and that's what we need to do. And this is, it's policing on a whole nother level. And this isn't right. This is very wrong. And I agree with Councilwoman Hill. We can pass this without, we can pass the zoning and still we have time. We have time to say, hey, let's put this community advisory council together, including leaders from that area. I think we should remove the name Silverdale Baptist. I don't think we should pass this resolution at all, but that's just my personal opinion. And create an advisory council or committee that comes up with the things that we need. When I hear, we don't know who we're serving humans, we're serving God's people. And we have to look at people from that perspective and say, hey, any one of us, and I think Councilwoman Coonrod has said it multiple times, any one of us could be in that condition. Baby, I ain't got that kind of money. I could be one of these people that needs supportive housing. I could be one of the people right now. You just don't know what my situation is. So I don't understand why we have to come in condemning people. I got an email from one of the great Silverdale Baptist people that told me, that says, this is not about people with silver spoons in their mouths. Yes, it is. It's about Christian elitism. It's about saying, well, we feel that we are better than these people, so they shouldn't be around us. Put a fence around them. I do want the fence. I want the fence to support the people in supportive housing so that they are not attacked by these Christian elitists that are coming for them. Because that's what it is. We're attacking people that's not there, that doesn't even exist. We're building this to fail. And I think Councilwoman Hill said it best. She said, it sets us up to build up something before it's even broken. And that's what we're doing. And I think it's shameful to see some of these, that a group can come in here and just bang their fist on the desk and say, this is what we want. This is what y'all need to do. And we just jump scared and say, okay, let's do it. I don't speak that much because, for the most part, I'm cool with most things. But this to me this doesn't make sense. We are supposed to be representing the residents in the city of Chattanooga. We have the opportunity here for this to be a game changer for our community. And we don't want to limit ourselves and to put any children above any other children and say, well, the children at Silverdale Baptist are better than the kids at Howard, or better than the kids at Barker, or better than the kids at Battle, or better than the kids at Dalewood or Woodmore. But, and put those kids above other kids. Things happen. We're hoping that everything's on a hope. We're hoping that, this will be a great project. And I believe that it is. I think that we can come in, really help people, really do some great things. But to just come in with a resolution because somebody banged their fist and stumped their foot and said, we don't like this and we don't like these kind of people. One gentleman last week said, I don't want these kind of people here. And when I say these kind of people, I mean homeless people. And then we came up with this after somebody was offensive to one of our homeless residents, one of our homeless Chattanoogans. We have to stand up for people. And this is our opportunity to do that. So I wanted to make sure that I shared my sentiment because I really wanted to be here last week. I really did, but I had a work emergency. But it was just killing me watching it online and hearing people come to my fellow colleagues who, I can't speak for everybody, but I know we support supportive housing. We support helping people. We support wanting to do the right thing by our people. We all do, because that's why we ran. We want a good city. We want our people to thrive in all of our district. But to have something like this that's just demonizing people before they come, and even the emails we got, I don't even know if you all saw the flyer that they sent out. It was a flyer that says, is this what you want in your community? And it had a homeless person laying on the ground. Is that what they think is happening? And it is sad. This is sad. And I don't think we should let Christian elitists come in and determine how we should govern because they're stumping their feet and beating on the table. So that is my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hill, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you. There were some things that I forgot to say, so I wanted to come back to them. First, I'm glad to know that we're building a consensus here as we're talking, and I think this is just genuinely such useful conversation. Councilwoman Burrs, in answer to your question as to conditions, the three conditions that I would support based on what you've said would be no chain link fence, an 8-foot wooden fence with the landscape buffer at the back of the property, and then the requirement of the sidewalk with landscaping, which is a part of UGC. Those would be the three that I think would be very appropriate as part of this conversation. though I will say also the max height, it's very common in these conversations at zoning to talk about max height. And I think, we're talking a lot about density, so I would feel comfortable to put a max height at 4 stories for a max height of 4 stories versus 5 stories. I would feel comfortable with that. Now, back to the thought about a community advisory group for this. The other thing about precedent is that we're creating a precedent for how we will offer permanent supportive services across our community. And in our conversations at some point, I feel like it was last week, we brought up that it would be great to have one of these in every district. If the need, it would be great to be at a place where we don't need one in every district, but we need to be comfortable with that. We need to come up as a council with a plan that's something that every one of us would be happy to have in our own district. And Chip and I share a road, and District 1's on one side and District 2's on the other, and then it will eventually all be District 2, where we have a supportive housing. It's run by CADIS, which is our region's primary substance abuse recovery program. I've mentioned to you all last week, there aren't needles on the ground. There's nobody sleeping outside the front of it. And in fact, I think it may have actually been zoned under form-based codes, so that there is no fence and the doors open onto the sidewalk. And right across the street is the North Chattanooga Community Center, where kids get dropped off the school bus. And the folks at CADIS, who are part of the program, not necessarily those who live in the apartments, but they actually are one of our #1 users of that community center. You'll see them regularly during the day using the field, using even the playground. So I bring that up because as we think about precedent, we've got to think about the cost for what we're going to build. And when we start adding a lot of rules about you've got to plant rose bushes and peonies and all this because my mom liked peonies, we start adding cost, right? When we say we want 24-hour, 7-day-a-week human person on site buzzing people in and out, there's a cost to that. And that cost is going to come from the taxpayer at the end of the day. So if we make a rule now that that's what we're going to have on Lee Highway, then it's absolutely reasonable that Councilman Hester would expect that all of that would happen in his district as well. So we've got to think about precedent and not over-engineer this before it's too late. I won't bang on that door anymore. But the other point that I wanted to make, I think that if we create this community advisory group with all manner of folks on it, I think it would be really useful for that group to become informed. I think really, I don't even know that this is about children. I think that's a word that we use a lot. It's about the kids. It's not really, I think really more than anything, it's about fear. Because people want to protect their children because they're afraid of something, right? Or they want to protect their housing value because they're afraid that something's going to happen, things like that. There is a permanent supportive housing facility in Knoxville. And some folks at C&E actually just went and saw it recently. And it's beautiful. It's in an old school. And that's something I personally would love to see. I imagine some other members of this council would love to see it. I'd love for a community advisory group that's part of the creation of this RFP advisory to see CADIS on the North Shore. I'd love for them to see group homes that are in District 2. That I personally happened upon when I went to knock on their doors, and it was a regular house, So there's a lot of opportunity for us to move past fear by becoming educated on this with a community leadership group as part of the preparation for the RFP. So if you all feel similar to me, I think I will just either move to table this resolution till next week to get a new version of it, or bring an amended version that is really short and sweet tonight, just based on what you all would prefer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. That motion would be a deferral for 1 week, possibly on the resolution. That would be the motion we would be looking for. And Karen, well, first of all, let me hit pause button real quick. So coming up at 4:00, we have our meeting. Do we have a revised condition list that we want to present, or are we still working through that, is my generic overall question. I'm going to need I'm going to clear the queue. If you would, please hold Dr. Burrs, go ahead and hit your light for me, please, because we need to make sure everyone's heard. Hit your light for me, Dr. Burrs. Okay,
All
thank
right.
you. Yes, ma'am.
So there are two issues. Much of the conversation has been about the resolution.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, which is totally different from conditions for rezoning. And the meeting is coming up at 4, and I need some clarity, or else we'll get in all of this again. This is what I understand. And is Karen still here? Okay, Karen, this is what this has been great conversation. Actually, the sign you saw about the homeless on the ground, I faced that from the very beginning as it was handed out to all my constituents from people who didn't live in the city, saying that they should convince me. So thank you all. It's been very lonely out there, and thank you very much for speaking up. Okay, what I have now is no chain link fence, an 8-foot, well, it's a 20-foot buffer with type what landscape, Karen?
Type B.
With type B landscape, fronting an 8-foot wooden fence. Now, I said I didn't think it needed to go all around the property with some sort of guardhouse in the front. I used the front as no fence, but a sidewalk with landscape. Is that what, please tell me if that's not what you want. I want it to look good. All right. All right. So make sure I've got this right. No chain link fence, an 8-foot, a 20-foot buffer with type B landscape in front of an 8-foot wooden fence on 3 sides. The side facing Lehigh, not on 3.
Just one side in the rear.
In the rear. All right, what do you want on either sides? Because it's dead space and right now it's a chain link fence.
You can put some low hedges.
So you don't want a fence, but you want the buffer.
No fence.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. All right. So it's the rear fence. But you do want the 20-foot landscape but around the perimeter, except the front is a little different because you can't go the same height. I'm sorry. The lot will take the buffers on either side. All right. It's the front that you don't want a fence. All right. And Karen, are you getting these down so I can have it? And then in the front, there's a sidewalk and there's landscape between the sidewalk, whatever that is, and the property itself. And you're doing 2 things. You're certainly fixing up this, but you're also setting a precedent for what else goes on in that area. And you're setting a precedent for what goes on in any district from here on out when we're talking about this sort of thing. Do I have that right? Yes? All right. Have I left out anything? Well, do you want that, or just, if you don't put anything, then if somebody wants to raise it, you can. It's up to you, but
Right now you have 2 stories.
right now you have
Maximum
2 stories.
stories.
If you stay
Yeah.
silent, then you don't
No.
limit.
Maximum 2, yeah.
That's what I think I heard you say. All right. So when we finish here, if we have any kind of a break, and let
Maria
me make
has-
sure what I'm saying.
Yeah, Maria has drafted that. Can I draft what Phil and I sent her that she interpreted? Could I read that just to make sure then Maria can finish the language?
I'd love it.
Okay.
Yes.
So no chain link fence, a sidewalk along Lee Highway with required landscape street treatment per city code section 38210 landscape requirements 1. That's the UGC street edge. Make a note. An 8-foot high wooden side obscuring fence shall be installed along the rear property line. A 20-foot type B landscape buffer shall be installed to the interior of the fence. And then a 20-foot type B landscape buffer shall be installed to the east and western, or I guess the side property line.
Yes.
And those are the conditions, and I'll just note that Bill Payne mentioned that the 20-foot landscaping buffer along the western property line would get into the fire lane. So I told him I'd pass that along.
What's the western line?
That'd be the one looking at the hotel to the right.
In the fire lane.
Just the building and the sidewalk come all the way up to the front property line and all the way to the right side property line. And so that is the fire lane that accesses the rear of the building. And I think he was just noting that 20 feet horizontal distance of buffering will get into that lane quite
Well,
a
can't we
bit.
just move the fire lane?
That I'm just passing along that comment. I
Can we
don't have
not
another
just move
comment.
the fire lane? I mean, it's a road.
Well, the current conditions are that all the space between the building and the property line are already paved. And that is where the fire lane wraps around that end of the building.
Mhm.
But what's immediately, you'd have to tear down part of the building in order to create the buffer because there is no more property in order to be able
It
to
would
make
be
it. And
over on the
and
next
the adjacent
property?
property has already built up to their property line with an existing commercial building.
Can the fire lane go on the other side of the building?
Well, there is one around that end. Now, I don't want to speak for the fire marshal, obviously, but I'm just saying what is there today. Obviously, we're
Well,
doing
can
all
we
this very
find out from
quickly.
the fire marshal? I mean, it's concrete, so move it to the other side of the
Well,
building.
and there is pavement to be able to go around, but whether or not they need access to be, we are talking about a multifamily, when we talk about 70 units,
Well, I think
just
what
being able
I'm-
to get around one end, those types of things can create
All
other
right,
safety
so
issues.
here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead, this will be a first reading. So I'm going to go ahead and put it all in there. And if we find out that we can't paint yellow lines or whatever on the other side, then we'll change that. Okay?
I just didn't want us to go into.
No,
this
that's
and-
great.
and
Thank
there'd be a
you.
problem later.
I'm going to continue with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for those of you following along, the conditions that are made in first reading, if they were to change in second reading, it reverts back to a first reading. So please make that a note, that if you make a conditional change in the second reading, it will revert back to first reading. And that will move the project or the case ahead one more week.
Mr. Chair, if
So
somebody
I've
could
got a whole
apprise
bunch of lights over
If
here.
if somebody could apprise the fire marshal, I mean,
Well, what I'm seeing here is conditions that really need to be vetted through the city before we make them nilly-willies, if you will, from the dais. And I'm not seeing that we're ready for that process. Councilman Hester, you've been very patient. Thank you, sir. You have the floor.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for their input on this. I want to thank Councilwoman Coonrod, Sister Soldier, for her passion on this. Thank you. To Councilwoman Hill, thank you for that delivery. Thank you, Ken Smith, for bringing in the person who has the pulse to this development. And I think it baffles me to say that my grandmother said the only time you look down at folks when you picking them up. I know that there was a great man that once said, "It's always the time to do right is right now." We're trying to do good, provide a service to those who are at the bottoms. And we're providing that service. And I think the intent is good, but we can't let those outsiders influence us. And in this great work we're about to provide for the city of Chattanooga. And I want to say this, give a shout out to the Charlie sector for the men and women in blue, that they do a good job in that area of the city, because I know for sure that the hotels that in that vicinity are hotbeds for prostitution, for sexual trafficking, for drugs. But I think you guys do a good job at regulating that. I'm quite sure you guys will do it when we do this development does come into fruition. Thank you for what you guys do too. Yeah, just keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Hester. Councilman Henderson, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Hey, Chief, do you mind coming to the podium for just a minute? I hate to put you in this position, but the resolution that contains the community agreement, the original one, the first one, I know we added one. Help me understand, that was an agreement that the mayor had with the pastor of the Silverdale Baptist Church and the headmaster of the school. Is that correct?
So I would describe this as informed. We said it was a contract with the community whenever we put it on the slide there, which was just to say.
What did that mean then? What
Right.
did the contract
So
with the community mean?
when we went to the meeting on Wednesday, we heard some things very clearly. Yes, from folks at Silverdale, but also from partners who had done these kinds of supportive housing projects before nationally. And also, yes, from community members that had called city council and called the mayor's office. And we knew that those items would not threaten the viability of this project. And so we were happy to agree to articulate those clearly.
But when you say you agreed to articulate those, did you agree to put those in the RFP?
Yes, so we did agree to cover.
Okay.
Now there's more items that are currently listed in the resolution than there were on the slide. Some of those items in the resolution are more detailed than the language that we had on the slide.
So many of these were on the slide that said community agreement.
Many of them are.
The fencing part was in another slide, but those were all things agreed on that they would be in the RFP by the mayor, correct?
So we said that I want to make sure I'm disentangling two things. So when we had a conversation with leadership at Silverdale Baptist Academy, that is again, we were listening for items that we could add into the RFP that were amenable to us. Our contract with the community is not a contract with the leadership of Silverdale Baptist Academy. This was what we were saying we could commit to for this project, given that there were community concerns in an effort to build some community trust on a project that was important. And one of those items that we felt comfortable with was the adding a requirement about the fencing item, because we did ask ahead of that an experienced service provider that was in our American Rescue Plan package, Step Up, whether or not that was something that was common on their projects, and they said it was. So we felt comfortable moving.
So here's what I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. The general public does not trust government.
I would disagree with that, but
I know I'm telling you, general public does not trust the government. That's just a fact.
Sure.
Now we can disagree, but I'm telling you, you could take a poll right now.
Sure.
That would be, if we don't honor what the mayor said he would do in those RFPs, do we lose credibility?
One of the things that I would clarify is that, the resolution, while we're comfortable with, the significant amount of the language there, is not a requirement for us to put that in the RFP. But yes, I think if we proceeded with an RFP that the mayor said, we're committing to these things, and then we don't add them in, I do think that would lose trust.
Can you point out to me then on this resolution, which items you feel like, I'm not sure how to ask this question, because what I want to do, I want to at least present to this council a resolution that backs up what the mayor has told the community, leadership, community members, whoever. All I'm wanting to do is present a resolution that backs up the commitment that the mayor made to the community that he said he would include. Because if we're not going to pass that, we need to pass as a council a resolution relinquishing the mayor of any promise that he made, so that we don't lose credit, or at least the mayor doesn't lose credibility with what he told the community he would do. All of these items that I had listed on the resolution, I felt like came out of the slide presentation, whether it was that one slide or it was other slides.
I think
my original resolution came out of your presentation.
What I will say is that the administration feels comfortable with every single one of those items except for the overnight guests item. We don't feel quite as comfortable with that. I don't think it would threaten the viability of the project, but that item I would say we don't feel as comfortable with. But
Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask then respectively, when we come to that item, that we read the original, not the alternate version, but the version that I submitted. I'm going to say the promises, the commitment that the mayor made to the community that he said he would include in the RFP. And if we don't pass that, all I'm doing is that we respectfully make a motion to relinquish the mayor of any promise that he made to the community, so that it's not on him when we don't honor the commitment that he made in trying to put this package together. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Councilwoman Coonrod, we have a few minutes. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. Chill. And you started this war. I'm gonna say that first. So you said that because we want to honor everything that, look, I could pull up receipts and all kind of stuff, even during the campaign, different things that's been said, things that our mayor today have been trying to do. And we as a council, it's done been several things he's wanting to implement, and council has, we gonna red exit. So if we gonna start saying it now, we need to honor everything he want to do moving forward. No, I got the floor. But I will say this, is that last I checked with the city attorney and reading our ordinances and things that we're supposed to do as a council, is not the mayor and his administration that creates resolutions and ordinances or vote on any of them. It's the council members. So we keep getting in this situation where administration and whoever else saying this is what we're going to do, and then we're in a corner saying, oh, well, we got to do it because this is what they want to do. I would appreciate it in the future is that instead of saying it, that this is what we're going to do without even engaging council members. See, that's the part that we're missing. We weren't engaged or had no knowledge about what was going on with what we're agreeing upon until last Tuesday, when it hit from emails and constituents coming to address us. We were treated at that point like we were the constituents. We're the elected body, but we getting information at the last minute. That's not fair to council members. This was already agreed on the Wednesday prior to our council member meeting from our mayor and administration. How does that make sense? How is that fair? How is that one Chattanooga? Are we not included in the one Chattanooga strategy? So that's all I'm asking for, administration. But what I think should happen, like I agree with what Jenny Hill said about us, maybe waiting or we can pass it, we can vote. But what I would like to see happen is because what the community member said last Tuesday, let's put a pause on it. Let's wait. Let's talk it out. Let's get with the community members. That means everybody, as Councilwoman Dotley said, not just with Silverdale Baptist in the academy, but the surrounding churches that's in the area too. Like we rushing to put something together that's gonna backfire on us. And it's done been a couple of things we done, and I sit here with my hands folded like, ha, ha, ha. I told you so. Because we don't want to listen. None of us have all the right answers to it, but I do think what you said that I can agree with is that if we're going to listen to the community, let's listen to them. Not just throw it in their lap and say, this is what we're going to go with. When a lot of people done stood up here asking us as a community, since we care about what the community say, and not just for this community, and I'm gonna bring this up. We had a lot of people that came and said, let's wait on the redistricting. Nobody listened to what those Black community members had to say. We rushed through that process and rezoned and zoned some people out of all these districts. That's not gonna happen until 2025. 2025, we made a decision on something that's gonna take effect then. But right now, we're talking about let's hurry up, let's move forward. And we see all these red flags that we clearly don't agree with, but yet we still talking about let's move forward with it. I would like for us to just really think about it. Let's put it on pause. Let's get with the community members, everybody that's in that community that have some kind of input. Let's create it now, because a couple of constituents through emails and voice concerns about the communication, the way that it was delivered to them. It just wasn't done in an acceptable way. Somebody failed to give the right information or to communicate it to them to where they can understand and hear what's going on. Now, also what's been said, Chair, is it's been mentioned about Step Up in Chattanooga, and we've not did an RFP for anybody to bid on. However, it's coming across as if this agency is already the one that's going to be running this organization. Now, is that something that's already been decided on for us, like the resolutions have? Or is it actually going to be a process to where somebody's going to bid in it? For me, AIM Center is right here. We should be looking at them to expanding opportunities for them to go run this place with the housing opportunity here. But instead, we're talking about somebody out of Chattanooga. So I would like, my thing, I would be, the motion for me is to defer it or table it, along with what Jenny Hill said, not just the resolutions, but I think what's gonna be on the agenda and give us time to really work with the community and see what the next move need to be.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We are right on 4 o'clock. So what we're going to do is run through the rest of our agenda with a few questions. I want to finalize the last point on this particular conversation. That is, I made an analogy a few moments ago. I believe we are in the fog heavily on this. And until we can see our way clearly through more dialogue and conversation, I am, that's where I'm at. I am not in support of moving anything forward at this point until we have the conversation that has been suggested by this council now from several members, including myself. And I think that is the right path. If we want to truly see success, we truly want to search our hearts, we truly want to make a difference in this community. I think the only way we do that, ladies and gentlemen, is together. That's enough on that. Council, if you'll take a look at your purchases, we only have 2 items for this afternoon. We have no emergency purchases. We have no RFP request. We will take a look at our November 15th proposed agenda. I know we've had a couple of questions on that, and I apologize. We are going to run a little bit late. We will take a 5-minute break after this before we adjourn back into our 4 o'clock meeting. Madam Vice Chair, you have the floor.
Just quickly on items, on the Public Works, item K and items K and L, talked about contractor delays and an increase in the contract amount. Just wanted clarity on that and how the contractor delays are a problem.
Bill, will you address that and how that is not coming out of taxpayer dollars and balancing out?
Certainly, be glad to.
Thank you.
And thank you for the question. These are delays that are the result of the contractor's actions. In one case, it's a 12-month delay on a contract. In another case, it's a 6-month delay on a contract. The contractor has completed enough of the work for it to be of beneficial use to the city. However, because of their delays, they still have some other remaining work that's left to finish up everything that's within the scope. These costs that you see tonight are to authorize the consultants that we have on the two respective contracts to continue their on-site work for us, representing the city on that contract. However, both of the construction contracts have clauses in them for liquidated damages, which we are recouping. We've already informed the contractors those liquidated damages that we recoup from the contractor will reduce what we pay them, and they will more than cover these costs that we're paying to the consultant, as well as covering other costs that the city has that are outside of these consultants. So ultimately, even though we're asking you all to approve an increase because of the delays, the net result to the city is that there will not be any additional increase in cost for these two projects.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Does that answer your question, Madam Vice Chair? All right, very good. Council, if you'll take, look for any other lights on the board. Councilwoman Hill, I do see your light. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you. In future considerations, there are several items under Office of the City Attorney related to ordinances to amend related our building codes and fuel gas codes, et cetera, to be international codes. I would like a lot more information on that so that we understand the practical implications of these changes, particularly as it relates to the cost to build multifamily housing. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. We have no department reports. We have no committees. Any other questions or comments before this body, before we adjourn? We will resume back here at 10 after 4. If you all would just stay tuned for just a moment, give us a chance to regroup. We've been up here for a few hours, and we will be back in session at 10 after 4. We are adjourned.